Hello everyone and welcome to J-Hook Crochet and More. In today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this beautiful reusable market bag that you can use to go grocery shopping or, like I did, yarn shopping. Yay! So let's get started and I'll tell you everything you need to know in order to make this beautiful reusable market bag. For today's tutorial, I'm using this yarn. It is 100% cotton. It is a lightweight 3 and I have a cake of 150 grams, 340 meters. For the bag, I will need 2 of these cakes. You will also need a 4mm crochet hook. So get your materials together and let's begin. We begin with a slip knot on our hook and we're going to chain 4. And we are going to slip stitch into the first loop that we made to create a circle. Now if you like to use the magic circle technique, you can do that as well, but I just like this technique better. I think it creates a more firm bottom for the bag. For the next row, we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3, and that chain 3 counts as our first double crochet, and we're going to have 10 double crochet in total into that little loop that we made. So this is our first, and we're going to put 9 more double crochet into that loop. Once you have your 10 double crochet, you can go ahead and slip stitch into the top of our starting chain to close the circle. And this ends our first row. For our second row, we're going to chain 3 again. And once again, that counts as a first double crochet and it will continue to count for the remaining of our pattern. Now we're going to put 2 double crochet in each stitch. So this counts as our first and we're going to double crochet again into the same stitch. And we're going to put 2 double crochet in each stitch all the way around. So we are increasing the number of our stitches from 10 to 20. So go ahead and put 2 double crochet in every stitch all the way around, and I will meet you at the end of the row where you should have 20 double crochet. At the end of the second row, you can go ahead and slip stitch into the top of your first chain, and this ends row number 2. Now we're going to continue increasing the same way for 2 more rows. So row 3 and row 4 will both be 2 double crochet into every stitch. So to begin each one of the next 2 rows, you chain 3, which counts as your first double crochet. Then you go back and double crochet again into the same stitch. And then go ahead and put 2 double crochet into each stitch around until you get to the end of your row. And at the end of your row, just slip stitch into the top chain and do that again for the next row until you have a total of 4 rows and 80 double crochet. And I will meet you there to show you how to continue. At the end of row 4, you should have 80 double crochet in total all the way around. And it's okay if your circle does not lay flat. It is not meant to lay flat. It is the bottom of our bag. To begin the next row, we're going to chain 3. And this counts as our first double crochet. And now we're going to put 1 double crochet into each stitch for the next 9 stitches for a total of 10 double crochet. So this is 1. This is 2. And so on for 10 double crochet. Once we have 10 double crochet, we're going to chain 2 And starting with the next stitch, we're not skipping any stitches. Starting with the next stitch, we're going to put 20 double crochet in a row. So 1 double crochet into each stitch for 20 stitches. Once we have those 20 double crochet, we're going to once again chain 2, and starting with the next stitch, put another 20 double crochet in a row. So once again, 1 double crochet into each of the next 20 stitches. Once again, we have 20 double crochets. We're going to chain 2 and do that again, starting with the next stitch. 1 double crochet into each stitch for the next 20 stitches. Once we got our 20 stitches, we're once again going to chain 2. And now we have 10 stitches left for the end of the row, and we're going to put 1 double crochet into each of them. At the end of the row, you can just go ahead and slip stitch into the top of the first chain 3. And now we have those groups of 20 double crochets divided by those chain 2 spaces. What we're going to do next is, first, to begin the round, we're going to slip stitch into the next stitch. So we're not going to start our round in the same stitch that we finished it last round. We're slip stitching to the next one. And now we're going to chain 3. And that would be our first double crochet of the row. And we're going to put 1 double crochet into every stitch until we get to that chain 2 space. When you get to the chain 2 space, including the beginning chain 3, you should have 9 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 double crochet, and that is including that beginning chain 3. And now we're going to work 1 double crochet and a V-stitch and another double crochet all into that chain 2 space. So I'm going to do that one time with you. Yarn over, go into that space and do a double crochet. And now we're going to do a V-stitch. That's a double crochet, chain 2, double crochet. So double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, and we are still working into that chain 2 space, and we're going to put 1 more double crochet into it. So we worked 1 double crochet, 1 V-stitch, and 1 double crochet all into that chain 2 space. And now we're going to work 9 double crochets, 1 double crochet into each stitch, and that is counting that first double crochet here. And you might have to move your stitches that you made into that chain space to see that stitch. This is the top of the stitch, and here will be our first double crochet. And we're going to do 9 of them. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Now we're going to skip the next 2 stitches. So these 2 stitches are not going to be worked, and we're going to put a double crochet into the next stitch. So skip 2 stitches, and into the next one put 1 double crochet. That's the first of 9 double crochets in a row that we're going to make until we get to the next chain space. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And now we are once again at a chain 2 space, and we're going to do the same as we did with the last chain 2 space. We're going to put 1 double crochet into that space. Now a V-stitch, that's double crochet, chain 2, double crochet. And now 1 more double crochet into that space. And we're going to repeat that again. So once again, we're going to put 9 double crochet into the next 9 stitches, skip 2 stitches, 9 double crochet until you get to the next space, and once again into that space, 1 double crochet, 1 V-stitch, 1 double crochet, and so on until you get to the end of the row. The important thing is when you work those 20 stitches in a row, don't forget that you only work 9 double crochets and then you skip 2 and work 9 more double crochets. So do that and I will meet you at the end of this row. I just finished working 1 double crochet, 1 V-stitch, 1 double crochet into the last chain 2 space, and now I have all these stitches left until the end of the row, and I'm only going to work 9 double crochet, the same as we did before. So I'm not going to work all of those stitches, only 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And I'm going to skip the last stitch and skip that chain 3 from before, and I'm going to slip stitch into the top of my beginning chain of this round, and this is how I'm going to end the round. To begin the next round, we once again slip stitch into the next stitch. And this is how we're going to do our repetition for the next few rows. Every row will begin by slip stitching into the next stitch and then chain 3, which counts as our first double crochet. And what we're going to do now is we're going to put 1 double crochet into each one of the stitches until we get to the chain 2 space. So this number of stitches will change from row to row because we are increasing. But the important part is that you put 1 double crochet into each one of them until you get to the chain 2 space. So go ahead and put 1 double crochet into each of the next stitches and I will meet you at the chain 2 space. Once we finished working 1 double crochet, 1 V-stitch, 1 double crochet into the chain space, we're going to put 1 double crochet into each of the next stitches until we get here to the point where we skipped 2 stitches from the last round. And the 1 stitch before that, we're not going to work. So go ahead and put 1 double crochet into each double crochet until you get to that stitch, the 1 stitch that is before the skipped stitches from the last round. I worked my stitches and I am now at the point where I have those 2 stitches that are above the 2 skipped stitches from the round before. And if you look at our work, you'll see that the spaces where we have the chain 2 spaces sort of create peaks. And those spaces where we skipped stitches from the last round create sort of a valley. It's not that clear now because it's only the first round of the repetition, but as we work it up, you will see that this corner here will get more and more a valley shape, and those corners will get more and more peak shape. We're going to save that valley shape by continuing to skip the 2 stitches that are right ahead of it. That means that these 2 stitches that are in both of the sides of the 2 skipped stitches from the round before, those are the 2 stitches that we are going to skip now. So we're not working this stitch and we're not working this stitch, and we're going to double crochet into the next one. And by doing that, we once again created this valley here. This is our peak where our chain 2 spaces are, and this will be our valley where the 2 skipped stitches are. And now we're going to work 1 double crochet into each stitch until we get to the chain 2 space again. When we get to the chain 2 space, we do the same as we did before. We put 1 double crochet, 1 V-stitch, 1 double crochet, all into that peak. By doing that, we once again maintained this peak. And now you can see clearly that our peaks are created by the chain 2 spaces and our valleys are created by the skip 2 stitches. And we're going to continue in this way all the way around. So once again, work 1 double crochet into each of the next stitches until you get to that stitch that is before the 2 skipped stitches from the previous round. And those 2 stitches that are on the sides of the skipped stitches, we're going to skip them. And then we're going to work 1 double crochet into each one of the stitches again until we get to the chain 2 space. And in the chain 2 space, we repeat 1 double crochet, 1 V-stitch, 1 double crochet, and so on. And we continue doing that until we get to our last peak. And I will meet you after we work 1 double crochet, 1 V-stitch, 1 double crochet into that last chain 2 space. I have just finished working 1 double crochet, 1 V-stitch, 1 double crochet in my last chain 2 spaces, and I have all these stitches left until the end of the row. And I'm going to put 1 double crochet into each stitch until I get to these 2 stitches. These are our last valley, and we're going to skip them and we're going to slip stitch into the top of our beginning chain. So put 1 double crochet into each stitch until you get to those 2 stitches that are at the edges of our valley. That should be the last 2 stitches before you get to the beginning chain 3 of the row. Then you skip those 2 stitches and slip stitch into the top of the chain 3. And here we are. This is the last stitch of the row. This is the stitch that we skipped and slip stitch into the next one to start the row. And this is our first chain 3. And we're going to slip stitch into the top of that chain 3 to finish our row. This is what our work looks like so far. The beginning row was 10 double crochets, and that would be row number 1. So including that row, we did 1, 2, 3, 4 rows of increases. And then row number 5 was the row where we did 20 double crochets divided by the chain 2 spaces. And then we started our repeat with row number 6 and 7. And we're going to repeat what we just did. Begin the row with slip stitch to the next stitch. Chain 3. And then put 1 double crochet into each stitch until you get to the chain 2 space. In the chain 2 space, we're going to double crochet, V-stitch, double crochet all into that space. Then 1 double crochet into each stitch until we get to that valley, those 2 stitches that are before and after the 2 skipped stitches from the last round. And we skip those 2 stitches and work 1 double crochet into each stitch until we get to the next chain 2 space. And we continue doing that all the way around until we get to the last 2 stitches, which are the sides of the valley from the row before. And we skip them and slip stitch into the top of the chain 3. And we're going to continue doing that for a total of 13 increase rows. That means that including our beginning row, from the beginning, we will have 18 rows in total. So continue working this way until you get a total of 18 rows, starting with our beginning row. Or if it's easier for you to count how many increase row you made, then there's going to be 13 increase rows. And I will meet you when you're done to show you the next step. So I finished working my 13 repetition rows for a total of 18 rows. And from now on, we're not going to increase anymore. So what we're going to do from now on is just make our bag deeper, but no larger. To begin the next row, we once again slip stitch into the next stitch. And we're going to do something very similar. We're going to work 1 double crochet into each double crochet until we get to our chain 2 space. So do that, and I'll meet you at the chain 2 space to show you how to continue. So I arrived at my chain 2 space from the previous round, and what we did until now, we put 1 double crochet, 1 V-stitch, 1 double crochet into the same space. But what we're going to do now is we're only going to put a V-stitch into the chain 2 space. So yarn over, go into the space, do 1 double crochet, chain 2, and 1 double crochet. And now we're going to continue and put 1 double crochet into each one of the stitches until we get to our valley again. And there, once again, we will skip the 2 stitches of both sides of the valley and put 1 double crochet into each one of the double crochets until we get to the next V-stitch. Once we get to that V-stitch, we will once again put only a V-stitch into it. And we're going to continue that way until we get to the end of the row. And I will meet you at the end of the row to talk about how we continue. When we get to the end of the row, we are once again at that valley, and we're going to skip the next 2 stitches and we're going to slip stitch into the top of our beginning chain 3. So this was row number 19, the first row without increasing. And we're going to make 9 of these rows, including the one we just made. So continue working in this way, repeating the row we just did for a total of 9 rows without increase, or a total of 27 rows from the beginning of the bag. And once you get a total of 27 rows, I will meet you and we will talk about how we finish the bag. Once you have your 9 rows without increase done, or a total of 27 rows, we are ready to move on to the next step. And now we're going to make a few rows of single crochet. So we're beginning by slip stitching into the next stitch just as we did in the previous rows. And we're going to chain 1, and that chain 1 does not count as a stitch. And we're going to work 1 single crochet back into that same stitch. And now we're going to work 1 single crochet into each stitch until we get to our chain 2 space. So work 1 single crochet into each stitch and I will meet you at the chain space. I got to my first chain 2 space and I'm going to put 3 single crochet into that space. So 1, 2, 3. Now we have 3 single crochet done into that chain 2 space, and we're going to continue putting 1 single crochet into each of the next stitches until we get to those 2 stitches which we used to always skip in the previous rows. So work 1 single crochet in each one of the next stitches until you get here, and I will meet you to move on to the next step. Once we get to those 2 stitches that we always used to skip in the previous rows, we're going to continue skipping them. So we're going to skip those 2 stitches, and into the next stitch we're going to work our next single crochet. And now we're going to work 1 single crochet into each one of the stitches until we get to the next chain 2 space. And once again in that chain 2 space we're going to put 3 single crochets, and then 1 single crochet into each one of the stitches, and when you get to those 2 stitches you skip them again and put 1 single crochet into each of the next stitches, and so on. And we continue this way all the way around until we get to the end of the row. So continue doing this and I will meet you at the end of the row. So I'm at the end of the row and I once again have those 2 stitches to skip, and I'm going to skip them and slip stitch into my first single crochet that I made. To begin the next row, I'm going to chain 1, and that chain 1 does not count as a stitch, and I'm going to put 1 single crochet back into that same stitch. This will be the first single crochet of the round, and we're going to put 1 single crochet into each one of the stitches until we get to these 3 stitches that we put in the chain from the previous round. So go ahead and put 1 single crochet into each one of those stitches until you get to those 3 stitches, and I'll meet you there to show you how to continue. When you get to those 3 stitches that we put all into the same space here, we're going to put 1 single crochet into the first of the 3, and then we're going to put 3 single crochet into the second of the 3. So those are the 3 stitches that we put into that same space. We worked 1 single crochet into the first one, and now we're going to work 3 single crochets all into the same single crochet. 1, 2, and 3. And now we're going to continue putting 1 single crochet into each one of the stitches until we get to the next peak. So this time we no longer skip stitches when we get to the valley. We just continue putting one single crochet into each stitch all the way around until we get to the next peak. And when we get to the next peak, we will once again put one single crochet into the first of the three single crochets into the second, and one single crochet into the third, and then again one single crochet into each of the next stitches until we get to the next peak. And we repeat that all the way around. And I will meet you at the end of the row to continue to the next one. So I'm at the end of my row and I'm going to slip stitch into the very first single crochet that I made of the round. And that ends my row. And now we're going to continue doing what we just did. So we're going to repeat this last row that we made for 2 more rows. We begin the row by chaining 1 and putting 1 single crochet into that same stitch. And then we put 1 single crochet into each stitch until we get to those 3 stitches that we put into the same stitch from the previous round. When we get to those 3 stitches, we put 1 single crochet into the first one, 3 single crochets into the middle one, and 1 single crochet into the last one. And then we continue putting 1 single crochet into each stitch until we get to the next peak and do the same. So we're going to continue doing that for 2 more rows. And once you finish those 2 rows, then we will meet up and I will show you how to make the handles. Once you finish all 4 rows of single crochet, it's time to move on and make the straps. So we're going to chain 1 and do 1 single crochet back into that same stitch. And now we're going to mark that first stitch with a stitch marker. The reason we do this is because from now on we will work continuous rows and no longer chain to go up a row. So we want to keep track where our first stitch is in order to be able to count how many rows we did. And now we're going to continue putting 1 single crochet in each stitch until we get to that peak. I am once again at the peak where I have 3 single crochet coming out of the same stitch. And I'm going to put 1 single crochet into the first one and then 1 single crochet into the middle one. I'm not going to put 3 single crochets into the middle one this time. Just 1 single crochet in the first and 1 single crochet into the second one. And now I'm going to chain. Now, the number of chains that I'm going to chain will determine how long the handles of the bag will be. So you can chain any number of chains that you want, but keep track on how many you chain because you're going to have to chain the same number for the second handle. If you want the handles of your bag to be short, then you can chain 30, 40, 50 chains. If you want them to be longer so you can wear it on your shoulder and have it hang at your side, you can chain 60, 70, 80 chains. It's your choice. Just be sure to keep track on the number of chains that you chain. So I chained 70 chains. And now we're going to skip all those stitches that are in between the 2 peaks. This is the peak we just chained from. And we're going to skip all these stitches. And on the next peak, where we have our 3 single crochets coming out of the same stitch, we're going to single crochet into the middle of the 3. Now we're going to put 1 single crochet into each of the next stitches until we get to our next peak. So put 1 single crochet into each one of the stitches and I will meet you at the next peak. I'm once again at the peak and I have the 3 single crochets coming out of the same stitch. And again, as we've done before, I'm going to put 1 single crochet into the first one, 1 single crochet into the middle one, and now I'm going to chain to have my handle. So I'm going to chain the same amount of chains that I have chained for my previous handle. That is why you have to keep count on how many you chained. So just go ahead and chain the same amount of chains that you did before and attach it to the next peak in the same manner we have before. And I will meet you there to move forward. To attach our chain to the peak, we look for the middle of the 3 single crochets that are coming out of the same stitch, and we single crochet into it. And we move forward to put 1 single crochet into each one of the stitches until we arrive at our stitch marker. So I'm at the end of the row, and as I have mentioned, we are no longer going to slip stitch and chain at the end of the row. What we're going to do is we're going to remove the stitch marker and begin the next row by just single crochet into the top of that first stitch. And now I'm going to put my stitch marker back into that stitch, so I know that this is the beginning of the row. And now I'm going to continue and put 1 single crochet in each stitch along all the way around for 5 rows. When I get to where I chained to make my strap, I'm going to put 1 single crochet into each one of the chains. Then on the other side, I'm going to continue putting 1 single crochet into each stitch until I get to my second strap. And once again, I will put 1 single crochet into each one of the chains until I get back to the other side. When I get back to the other side, I will put 1 single crochet in each stitch until the end of the row, and then do the same. Remove the stitch marker, do 1 single crochet to begin the row, and put the stitch marker back to remind me where the end of the row and beginning of the row are. So I'm going to continue doing this for 5 rows. So until my straps will be 5 rows thick. So just go ahead and do this for 5 rows, and I will meet you to show how we are going to finish our bag. Once you have your 5 rows done on the straps, then you can go ahead and take your stitch marker out, slip stitch into that stitch where the stitch marker was, and then you can cut your yarn and fasten off. Now all we have left to do is sew in that tail, and our bag is done. And here it is, our finished bag. It has this beautiful pattern with the peaks and valleys. If you used a yarn like mine that changes colors, or if you just chose to use different balls of yarns that change color, then you have that beautiful pattern on it as well. It is big enough to go shopping at your local grocery store and will hold a lot of things in it. As we used the cotton yarn, then it is also very strong. It has a little bit of a stretch to it, but the straps won't stretch out too much as long as you don't put too many heavy things inside. It is good for vegetable, fruit, milk cartons, maybe some bottles, but as long as you don't put too much weight on it, it will keep its shape and will be useful for a very long time. It's also very nicely foldable and will fit into a smaller pouch if you need it to. And that's it. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and found it useful. And if you have, please give this video a thumbs up and be sure to share with your friends. If you are not yet subscribed to my channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you will be notified whenever new tutorials and videos come up. So until next time, bye!